Very good afternoon, our dear participants, both in person and online. Thank you so much for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us today. Welcome to the third workshop of the Research Capacity Building Workshop Series titled Strategy for First-Time Author to Publish Academic Journal Article, which will be led by Dr. Sovinda, the Director of the Center for Southeast Asia Study of the Institute for International Study and Public Policy at the RUPP, at the Royal University of Phnom Penh, or we can call RUPP. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our dear participants to our organization. The Center for Khmer Study, or you can call us CKS, is a non-governmental organization dedicated to promote research and teaching in the field of social science, art, and humanity in Cambodia and the Mekong region. We offer fellowship programs, research training programs, and travel grant and library resources to students, researchers, and scholars, not only in Cambodia, but overseas. This workshop is the third and the final session of the Research Capacity Building Workshop series. In the first year of the CKS PC2 program, with the funding support from the Australian government, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, through the Bloomberg Data and Dialogue for Development in Cambodia program. Without further ado, I will hand the floor to our speaker, Dr. Sovinda, to lead the whole discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Lu, for a very kind introduction, and very good afternoon to everyone. How are you? You doing okay? Wonderful, wonderful. Very glad to see you. Let me first start by saying thanks a lot, CKS, for the invitation. Thanks a lot for Gabriel for the invitation, and thanks a lot, Lu, for facilitating today's workshop. So I'm so grateful to be here and very, very happy. So the topic of my talk is writing a journal article. But before I talk about it, I'd like to also thank Punlok 𝐸𝐻𝐿. Punlok 𝐸𝐿 is a program funded by the Australian government. I've been part of that program since day one a few years ago, and I've been with Punlok 𝐸𝐿 in various occasions. The program has done a lot of good things in terms of promoting research in our own country. I think this is something that we all should be very grateful. I'm so grateful for that as well. So thanks a lot to the Australian government and to Punlok. So again, now, my hellos to the online participant as well. I cannot see you physically, but my sincere thanks to your participant online. I was told there are more than 100 participants online. That's really impressive. So my sincere thanks to all of you online as well. Now, writing a journal article. Here a bit about me. So my name is Sovinda 𝐻𝐿. I did my PhD in political science / international relations at Griffith University of Australia. My current position, I'm the director of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies here at IUPP, and I am fortunate enough to be given a visiting fellowship at ISEAS-Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore. So my research project for 2025 will be the triangular relationship between Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. So I'm working on that too. I'm quite excited to focus on the three countries that are ignored by a lot of people. I have some papers published by these journals like Australian Journal of International Affairs, Asian Studies Review, European Journal of East Asian Studies, Southeast Asian Affairs, Journal of Current Southeast Asian Affairs, among many others. So I appear in many other media outlets as well, here in Cambodia and overseas. I've been invited to speak at many prominent institutions such as National University of Singapore, which I will be again by the end of this month, at NTU, at ISEAS, ANU in Australia, Melbourne, Griffith, ASEAN Future Forum, Shangri-La Dialogue, and many among others. I used to teach at Griffith University as well. So that's so brief about me. Now let's get into the topic, which is writing a journal article. But before we talk about how to write a journal article, let me check with the audience a bit. What is a journal article? Anybody wants to try? Let's open up the floor. Let's have fun. What is a journal article? Anyone wants to try? Sorry, I didn't bring my chocolate, so let's try. Anybody wants to try a journal article? Yes, please.
My name is Mark Leroux. I live here in Cambodia now. I'm a little bit older. I've had a lot of experience with both conducting, reviewing, and trying to understand research. So I think the question of what is a journal article is that you, as a researcher, are trying to share your information, your view around a very specific topic that is of interest to you and has some impact to the larger sector, environment, group that you work in. I would suggest that the journal article really is not everything that you know, but is really very specific to a particular topic, a very particular question, and only one question per article. So I found that some people are challenged by thinking that the journal article has to be extremely large, has to cover all components of a topic, where I think it's most important. And the challenge is to say, this is my particular specific question. What do I know about it? What is not known about it? What would be helpful to know about it and the impact of that? Therefore, that's my question. I will do literature review to understand what's currently known and to, again, identify the gap. I will then develop methodology that says I'm going to try to fill that gap by clear, linear, step-by-step, well-controlled approach to methodology, to data collection, to analyzing, interpreting, and then making recommendations and what the impact may be. And lastly, I will say is that when you complete the journal article and when you complete the one idea, you should walk away with 5 or 10 more ideas because you've now become a much broader expert. And by looking deeply, you realize there's more that is unknown that is known. So your challenge is keep it tight, keep it simple, one idea. And once you do one, it leads to 3 and 4 and 5 in the future.
Wonderful. Please, clap for gentlemen. That's a perfect response to a question. That's awesome. So thanks a lot for that contribution. My job is over. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. So thanks a lot. I think that's perfect summary of what a journal article should look like. Now let me share a bit of my perspective on that. So this very short definition of what a journal article is. You read it here on the screen. A journal article is a scholarly work published in an academic journal. It typically presents original research, reviews existing literature, or discusses theoretical frameworks. That's a very short definition of what a journal article should look like. More details into the characteristics of a journal article. Anyway, we'll run the lecture quickly because we have about 3 hours and I have 50 slides to share. So please do take notes. If you have any questions, you can always stop me and ask along the way. But I'm gonna run fast. Okay. Now, the characteristic of a journal article. One, it is a peer review. A peer review means when you submit, you have a paper, right? You have a journal article. You submit it to a particular journal. Then your paper has to go through peer review. Peer review means there are 2 or more reviewers who are reading critically your papers. Me now, I'm reviewing 3 articles, one for Contemporary Southeast Asia, one for Asian Study Review, and the other one for Asia Europe Journal. So what I do is to read line by line, right? To read line by line and determine whether that particular piece of scholarly work is publishable or not. and whether that particular paper meets the high standard of what we call academic journal publication. So that's called peer review, and most of the time we have to reject it. You cannot go through it. Some people say, hey, I have a paper, I want to publish at your journal. It's not that simple. You have to go through painful process. I will talk about that at the end of my presentation as well. But peer review means there are more than two reviewers reading your paper critically and providing comment. If they like it, they will accept it. If they don't like it, they will say, no, we reject your paper. That's number one, peer review. Second, structure. It needs to follow a certain structure. I know in quantitative and qualitative and mixed method, we have different structure. What I'm talking about here is mostly a structure of a qualitative research, and it usually follows very straightforward, which is an abstract. You need to have an abstract, introduction, methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. That's it. That's kind of simple. Number three, you need to have citation. You need to have citation. I've seen a lot of works that do not have citation. You just keep writing, right? You keep writing. But when you keep writing without citations, most of the time, gentlemen mentioned before, you do not really engage with the existing literature, meaning you do not engage with your certain field of expertise. For example, I'm an IR person. I focus mainly on foreign policy of Southeast Asia. So citations look like this. I would read papers written by a lot of people relevant to foreign policy of Southeast Asia. I have to cite them. If I don't cite them, meaning I don't engage with them. If I don't engage with them, how can I situate my study in the existing literature? And then the reviewer will say, what is your contribution? What is the contribution of your paper? Then the reviewers will just reject the paper immediately. So you need to have citations. The audience is different. For example, if you write a short commentary, technically the audience would be everyone, right? But a journal article, you have a specific kind of audience. And most of the time, your audience includes researchers, like me and like all of you here, academics or professionals in your specific field. You don't actually write for everyone. Like you write for a specific group of people. And the purpose is very simple. Simple is you want to advance knowledge and you want to share your findings, and of course you want to contribute to ongoing scholarly discussion. Ongoing scholarly discussion, for example, in my case, a lot of people say foreign policy of Southeast Asia is one that is called hedging, meaning you don't choose sides between the US and China. That is the current understanding of Southeast Asian foreign policies at the moment. But I would say no. In fact, there are variations of foreign policy of Southeast Asian states. If you take a look at Cambodia and Laos, we have different kind of foreign policy vis-a-vis the US and China. You take a look at Singapore, Malaysia, the Philippines, they have different kind of foreign policy from us. So that way, we contribute to ongoing scholarly discussion in that sense. You want to publish it because you want to contribute to that particular kind of discussion. So here are the 5 characteristics of a journal article. And another question is why? Why do you want to write a journal article? What is it in there for you or for your country? And why do you write a journal article? Now, why do you write a journal article? Without looking at the slides, can you guess? Anybody wants to try? Why do you want to write a journal article? Can we have whether the online participants or participants here? Anybody wants to try? Why do we want to write a journal article? Yes.
But simply because you have found something new. You have something new to say.
Of course, yes.
On a major interesting subject that can appeal to a wide audience.
Wonderful. Please clap for gentlemen. That's handy. Thanks a lot. Because you have something new to share, yes?
Yeah, so the very two simple words are one versus many.
If you don't publish, then only one person knows about this. If you publish, then many people know that may stimulate them to begin to add and contribute to the literature and to the research. So you really are helping, your sector, your group, your environment, your whatever, to grow and develop and continue to move forward. The world is dynamic, so research has to be dynamic.
Wonderful. Please clap for you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sharing. Now, here are my own personal opinions on why we should write a journal article as a scholar. One, as the two gentlemen have mentioned, you want to disseminate knowledge, right? One versus many. If you don't publish, then only you yourself know about that. But if you publish it, and then a lot of people will know about it. So first of all, you can disseminate your knowledge to a wider audience. Second is peer recognition, because you wanna be known as well to your colleagues, right? For example, I'm working on foreign policy stabilization. I say that a few times. I want to make sure that my peers, not just in Cambodia, of course we are well connected in Cambodia, one way or the other, but I want to make sure that my peers in Thailand, in Laos, in Vietnam, in Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Indonesia know my work, right? So I have to make sure that they know my work. So they invite me there, I invite them there. We have discussions in person or online. So that's what we call peer recognition. If you don't publish, most of the time you are not recognized, right? And a lot of people claim to be an expert in that field, but they have not published anything. If you don't publish anything, we have doubts, right? We have doubts whether you are truly an expert in that field. But if you publish something, then you can claim that, okay, I know the things because I published it, right? So that's where we call peer recognition. And number three is, it's something that I'm sure you wanna know. It's called career advancement. Meaning the more you publish, the easier you can get a better position, a better job, or you have more opportunities to be promoted, okay? Or you can have a better position somewhere else. We don't know. So that's called career advancement. If you publish, you have better chances of getting better and better position. You can progress well in your profession. So career advancement. This is, for example, my own case. My own case. I was in Hanoi for this ASEAN Future Forum, and I was on the same panel together with prominent people. The Australian ambassador to ASEAN. We were on the same panel twice. We have the EU ambassador to ASEAN, and we have, who else? We have president of one big think tank in the Philippines and a senior researcher from Brunei. And you didn't see the Laotian foreign ministers in the picture, but he was actually here. And so this is something that I feel so happy about. So when you do publish, a lot of people know you, and you have better opportunities to be invited to talk about your knowledge around the region, right? Around the region. I will be in Singapore again at the end of this month, talking about security issues in Southeast Asia too. So that's what I call career advancement. So the more you publish, the better. The more you publish, the better. In academic circle, we have these two words: you publish or you perish. I'm sure that's quite common among scholars to know these terms: publish or perish. So you have to publish, otherwise perish. But the important question, how? Right? Now we know what a journal article is. We know the reasons why we should write a journal article. The question is how. How is the most difficult question, and it will take many hours. I'm teaching a research methodology at the bachelor's level, the master's level, and PhD level. And I can tell you, one course of research methodology is not enough for students to actually learn how to do research, not to mention how to write a journal article. And my job is here today is sounds like impossible just to get every one of you to write a journal. Do you think so? Oh, a lot more disagree. That's good. So can we all agree that after the session today, you all know how to write a journal and you can do it? And can we promise on that? Yes? Yes. Yes? Louder, please, yes? Yes. Come on, yes? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Please clap for yourself. Come on. Let's keep up the energy, otherwise you are going to go to sleep. We usually are sleepy after lunch. So now now we'll try to put 45 hours of my methodology course into 2 hours, like let's say 1 hour, and let's see how we go. How? So first of all, you need to understand the structure. Like the gentleman said before, you need to understand the structure. So we are the simple structure you can consult. I don't say that this is like the gold standard structure, but it's just a common structure that I've seen at many places. So you need to have an introduction. That's very straightforward. In the introduction, you may need to write between 5 to 2,000 words. The framework, 1,000 to 3,000 words. Methodology, 5 to 2,000 words. Findings and discussion, 2,000 to 4,000 words. And of course, conclusion, 5 to 10,000 words. So typically, a journal report should be between 6,000 words to 10,000 words, depending on the requirement of a particular journal. Some journals may look for 5 to 6,000 words. Some journal may say between 8,000 words to 10,000 words. Some big journals may, in rare cases, I said 12 to 15,000 words, but it's kind of rare. In my field, international relations, for example, international security, which is a top journal, they are asking between 12 to 15,000 words. That's very long, like 40, 50 pages. That's pretty long, but that's very good as well. So these are the sort of like standard length of a journal report. Now, here are a few tips you can focus on while you are writing an introduction. First of all, you need to provide the background information. The background information here, I know the letters are a bit small, but everybody can see it. It's okay if you can see. Now, we can read a bit together. So the background information, here you can provide context by summarizing existing research or key concepts related to your topic, and this helps readers understand the broader landscape of your study. So what do you focus on, right? What do you focus on? And it's important you provide a bit of background about what you are researching, a bit of background about what you are researching. And then you need to define your research puzzle or problem. You need to define your research puzzle or problem. In Cambodia and perhaps in Southeast Asia more broadly, I'm not quite sure whether students are fully exposed to a research puzzle. One thing I know for sure is that students are fully aware of what a research question is. That's for sure, right? A research question, you start with what, why, how. That's very straightforward, right? But I'm not quite sure whether students are fully exposed to what a research puzzle is. And in my own opinion, a research puzzle is much more important than a research question itself. A research puzzle has to happen first before you can formulate your research question. I will talk about that in a minute, but just want to draw your attention to that part. So again, number 2, you need to define the research puzzle and a research question. And then you need to outline the dialogue or the structure. We will need to read a paper together, the introduction of a paper together in a while. Now, a moment ago, I talked about research puzzle or research question. Now, before we talk about it, just want to check with you a bit. What is a research puzzle? Your existing knowledge. What is a research puzzle? Of course, you understand the same problem or the same question. One is a research puzzle.
The basic things that it needs to be discussed in your research paper.
Can you elaborate a bit further?
So, for example, like public policy of public transportation. So, it's the missing piece behind what is going on, like for certain topic, and that it needs to be solved. So it's like to find the tip of the puzzle is to find the missing piece.
Find missing piece, right? Wonderful. Thank you. Please clap for Tina. Thanks a lot, Tina, for your answer. Can I have one more person? What is a research puzzle based on what you learned so far? We will get back. Yeah. What is a research puzzle? I guess.
I think a research puzzle it's like gaps that you find in the previous research.
Okay.
And then we try to put all the pieces, try to put in.
Okay. Wonderful, Janet. Please continue. Thanks a lot. Now let's take a look at together research puzzle. Okay. Now start with the research question first. Now, the research question is a concise and specific inquiry that defines the scope of a research project. As I said earlier, it can start with WA questions, right? Let's say, what are the factors causing traffic accidents? What are the factors causing people to feel sleepy after lunch? Something like that. So it's called a research question. A research puzzle is kind of similar, but it's not entirely the same. Now, a research puzzle refers to a broader conceptual challenge or a problem that researchers are trying to address. As colleagues have mentioned, it can be a gap, right, or inconsistency in existing knowledge, theories, or understanding that motivates the research. A research puzzle often emerges from the observation of contradictory findings, unresolved debates, or unexplained phenomena in the literature. And the third point is very important. Most of the time, when you read different papers, sometimes people say different things. That's called contradictory findings. Now, I'll give you one example, but we'll talk about it in a minute too. Contradictory findings, for example, in my case, I say Cambodia is in a technical word we call bandwagoning with China. And the other scholar said, no, Cambodia is hedging with China. So it's kind of, why do we have two different understandings, right? Findings of the same question, Cambodia's foreign policy. And it's contradictory finding. If you want to do anything about it, that's a perfect puzzle for you to focus on. Number 4, it represents a more complex and multifaceted issue that requires deeper investigation and analysis. Now, we have 3 types of puzzle here. 1, empirical puzzle. Second, theoretical puzzle. Third, methodological puzzle. Now, let's talk about the first one, empirical puzzle. Here, the definition of empirical puzzle. An empirical puzzle is grounded in real-world events, right? Real-world events. As such, these puzzles lend themselves to inductive research, creating the dual challenge of requiring researchers to be familiar with the actual cases and working backwards from the puzzle to find or build an appropriate theoretical framework. While empirical puzzle requires some familiarity with theory or conventional wisdom, they rely primarily on researchers' knowledge of a case or a region. For undergrads or grad students, empirical puzzles are likely the most accessible mode of discovery, as they are grounded in real-world political phenomena. I think that's pretty much the case. I've been supervising a lot of students' thesis, And most of the time it's like 99.9% focus on empirical puzzle because they know what's happening. And from what they know that is happening, and then they can formulate a research question. So most of the time they focus on empirical puzzle. In empirical puzzle, you have three types too. Now, this is the gist of it. So the first type of empirical puzzle, we call it contra expectations. Contra expectation. What this means is that when a phenomenon occurs against the conventional wisdom or theoretical expectation regarding everything we think we know about something. To simplify it, it means that one particular thing should not happen, but it happened. It should not happen, but it happened. That's called contra expectation. Think about it, right? In your field of research, what is one thing that should not happen, but it happened? Can you think about it? The thing that should not happen, but it happened. Anything? In your line of research, the thing that should not happen, but it happened. Any phenomenon that should not happen, happened. You want one try?
Let's use that for use less of public transportation, even though the public transportation system exists.
Okay. So you think that
Like before it practice the system, we expect that people use it more often. When actually happen is people didn't use it.
and why do you think that people use it more often? And why do you think that people would use public transport more often?
Because before we saw that because people doesn't have access to the system. So the reason is when the system exists, we expect people to use it.
People have not used it that extensively.
Yeah, it's not public widely used.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Please start the team. Thank you. So she said that people have not used the public transportation that's widely and widely. That is a puzzle because the government expects that people would actually use it, but it turns out that people do not actually use it widely. Some people do, but not many people do. So you begin to question why, right? Yeah, that's very good one. Thank you. Any other? Perhaps one more. Something should not happen, but it happened. Yes.
It's not from the it's not from my inside, but I just got the history about Uncle Wat. We all know that Uncle Wat is so big and powerful, and why it destroy or it get abandoned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, people in Europe or at that time could not imagine why it can be happen like that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Your name?
Happy
Lina. Okay. Wonderful. So he would ask, why did, how could we build Angkor Wat? Something like that, right?
Something like why it get destroyed. It
Why?
got abandoned because at that time, Angkor Wat is the empire. It's like
Yes.
somebody empire, like
Why did the former kings abandon Angkor,
yeah,
right, and move to other capital cities? We have to ask Andy for that. Thank you. So yes, this is something like contra expectation as well. So when you are working on a journal article, this is something you should keep in mind. You need to focus on something that should not happen, but it happens. That way, it's puzzling. That way, it's puzzling. If you don't focus on that, and it's not really puzzling. For example, I'll give you, most of my students would ask, what are the causes of traffic accident? Do you find it puzzling? Do you find it puzzling? Not so much, right? What are the causes of traffic accident? When you read the literature, you will find out the answer. Definitely, yes. So why do you do research on that? It's a waste of time and resources. So think about something that should not happen, but it happened. For example, why did Cambodia withdraw from the CLB DTA project? Yeah, I want to know too. Right? The project was initiated by former Prime Minister Hun Sen. We would expect Cambodia would stick to it. It was the case for 20 years that Cambodia would be very happy to go along with Vietnam, but this time no. Right? This time no. And then it's puzzling because I want to understand too why. Why? So this is what we call contra expectation. Something should not happen, but it happened anyway. Number two, divergence convergence. Divergent convergence is like a set of cases that do not relate to each other in an expected way. For example, divergence. Divergence is when multiple cases that look similar experience but different outcomes. Two cases that are relatively the same, but the outcomes of that are different. For example, Laos and Cambodia, we are in many ways are similar, right? Our culture, politics, economy, our relationship with China and Vietnam, sort of like quite similar. But when it comes to their decision regarding hydropower dam, it's different. In Laos, they will go all in with hydropower dams. Like, no question about hydropower dams in Laos. In Cambodia, we say, what did we say to hydropower dams? We say, sorry? Yeah, we exist in this hydropower. What did we say in Cambodia to hydropower dams? We say no longer. We no longer develop hydropower dams. The Cambodian government said long time ago, not long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago. No longer with hydropower dams. We don't develop hydropower dams anymore. In Laos, they said, no, we're going to continue to develop hydropower dams. So then the divergence case is like this. When multiple cases look similar, but they have different outcomes, they have different decisions. This is in fact the paper I'm working on, which we will read the reviewers' feedback. There's like 18 pages of comments. So that's called divergence. Next is convergence. Convergence means when multiple cases that look very different experience, but the same outcome. The same outcome. I may be wrong with this example, but let me try. For example, in Africa, they have different political systems in Africa. They have different political systems. They have different economic systems. Their geography is relatively. Some regions are the same. Some regions are different too. But one thing that we know for sure is that most of the African countries are still poor. I don't want to use the word poor, but I don't have a better word. Sorry. So are poor. So then we would ask why, right? Why you have different political systems, you have different economic systems, sort of different kinds of geographies and weather as well. But at the end of the day, most of them are still poor. And in that particular case, it's called convergence. Right? That political case convergence. Different experience leading to the same outcome. That's called convergence. Number two, divergent convergence. Number three, variation over time. Variation over time, it means when conditions of a political phenomenon seem stable, a political phenomenon, or social phenomenon, or economic phenomenon seems stable, but suddenly it changes. It seems stable for like, let's say 20 years, but at that particular moment, it suddenly changed. That's called variation over time. The example in my case, if you take a look at the relationship between the US and Cambodia, it's been stable since the early 20s, let's say. In the early 20s, the relationship between Cambodia and the US seems stable. Bit of issues, but okay, manageable. But it suddenly collapsed in 2014, 2015, particularly in 2015, when the Cambodian government canceled the US military aid, shutting down some US NGOs, many others. So it's like the relationship went off the road. So then the question would be like, okay, it's been stable for 20 years or so, but 2015, it collapsed, right? It collapsed. So then you would ask the question, yeah, we want to understand why. So it's kind of passive. What happened? What happened? We want to understand more. So that's what we call variation over time. So again, if you focus on empirical puzzle, and these three types of empirical puzzle, you can focus on. You can pick one and you can focus on it. That's called empirical puzzle. Before I move on, let me pause a bit, 1 minute or so. Any questions? Any clarification?
There is a question from the Zoom attendee. I think you already answered the question. The question was, how could we formulate a research puzzle? And could you give an example or two? Thank you so much.
All right, then thank you to the online participant. One way to develop a research puzzle is to do literature review, right? To conduct literature review. Literature review means you need to read a lot of papers. You need to read a lot of papers. You need to read a lot of books that are relevant to your research question. You have to read, and read, because some of the questions you want to answer have been answered already. So in order to develop an effective research puzzle, there is no better alternative than conducting literature review. You have to conduct literature review. You have to read, and read. If you don't read, chances are you will not have a good research puzzle. Chances are you would not have a good research puzzle. Think about it this way. I spent like a year, not really a year, 6 to 9 months doing one thing only, finding a research puzzle for my PhD thesis. Okay. I mean, it can be different in other cases, right? In some of my friends' cases, like a year, just to find a research puzzle. And in other cases, like 3 months, so it depends, right? How fast, how slow. The more you read, the faster you can find a research puzzle. If you don't read enough, then it will take you a very long time to get a research puzzle. So conduct literature. Yes?
May I know about the word research gap? The difference between research puzzle, is the different or the same?
If me only, people will have different opinion on that. I refrain myself from using the gap. I would prefer the term puzzle because a gap doesn't mean anything. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you would ask, why do you want to fill that gap? Because the gap is not puzzling, it's just the gap, right? Puzzle is puzzling because that's why we call it puzzle. And I know in Cambodian context, a lot of people, a lot of students will look for gaps in literature. And most of the time, gaps you can find it quite easily, right? When you read, you'll find it out quite easily. But the next question you should ask is whether that particular gap is worth researching. Because when you do research, it means time, resources, mental energy, and relationship as well, because you have to spend time alone and you have to say no to a lot of your boyfriends and girlfriends. Còn có cái điều kiện tính cái đấy nó cùng research, còn ai lại research ở thành phố này nó chọn việc này Yeah, it can happen. It happens in my case. So yeah, you have to think about that. So that's why I spend more time on it, because you have to make sure that what you are researching is worth it, right? It's worth it. It's something unique, something credible that you can contribute to the existing. Otherwise, you produce something that has been done before. Then nothing new, nothing important. Then yeah, that's not. So for me only, people have different opinions. I would for the word puzzle and yeah. Any other question? Happy you to disagree. Yes.
What make a good research puzzle?
What make a good research puzzle? You follow this. For sure. As long as it falls under one of these categories, I think it's a good research. Right? Yeah.
What is the relationship between the research puzzle and the research question?
Okay.
I don't know.
A research puzzle is pretty much like a context, or in Cambodian context, we call it a statement. It's pretty much like a statement. The statement that can address one of these categories, and then from that you can formulate a research question. So when you ask a question, most of the time people will look for the foundation of that question. What is the foundation of that question? And most of the time, students don't have a foundation of that question, right? The foundation of that question is what we call puzzle. When you have a puzzle, you have a foundation of a question. When you don't have a puzzle, then you don't have a foundation of a question. Anyone can ask a question, can we? Yes.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you don't have the foundation of that question. Meaning, why did you ask that question? Maybe one more question.
Yeah, thank you. Just another question. How could also you differentiate or between acumen and research puzzle?
Thank you. Okay, that's going to be controversial to say, but let me try. We have two ways forward. One is to have an argument very early on, and then you try to find evidence to support your argument. That's one way most of scholars in my field do. They have an argument, they find evidence to support an argument. That's very straightforward. I did that before. Now I shift a bit. I don't have an argument very early on. I like to get the data first and then analyze data extensively and try to formulate an argument out of that data. So that way it's more objective. If that makes more sense. The first approach is more subjective because you will just cherry pick, right? You cherry pick, you pick evidence that support your argument and you ignore the other evidence, right? I did that before, to be very honest. I did that. It's easy, right? You write the introduction, you have an argument, you explain it, you have the evidence to support it. At the end of the day, it's all done. It flows really well from the beginning to the end. It's easy to do. I did that. But now I shift a bit. I think that's biased, and I think that's subjective. So I would want to go for a very objective way of doing things. Then I would just collect data first. I have questions, of course, and I collect data and I analyze data quite critically and formulate an argument based on that data. So I for now would go for the second one. And regarding to the puzzle, puzzle happens first for yes. I think we can move on. Thanks a lot for the question. Can you clap for yourself? All right, so we'll take that a question. The difference between framework and a research puzzle. I will talk about framework in a minute. That's my chance. That's my. I will talk about the framework in a minute. So thanks a lot for your question. So the next, the second type of puzzle is what we call theoretical puzzle. But I will go it quickly because I'm sure many of you will not focus on a theoretical puzzle. I do. I focus on it most of the time. It's kind of interesting for me. About theoretical puzzle. Theoretical puzzles are found in gaps or contradictions in existing literatures. Largely deductive research, such puzzles require familiarity with a particular body of theory and pose challenges of case selection in order to test a new theory. Learning how to identify a theoretical puzzle requires an extra dimension of sophistication for many undergrads, or maybe more suitable for grad students. Now, in my case, I focus on that because I think that's really interesting because I want to contribute more to theory than to the theoretical knowledge. So what I did in my PhD was to read extensively regarding a particular theory we call realism in international relations. So in realism, you have many kinds of realism, and I read from traditional realisms until the current one, what we call neo-classical realism. Read and read until I found out that okay, there is one scholar who argues that regime type, whether democracy or authoritarianism, communism, so on and so forth, regime type doesn't matter at all in explaining foreign policy of states, particularly foreign policies of small states. And I said to myself, I'm coming from Cambodia, we're living in a country where you already know. And I think, yeah, that's interesting. I would disagree with that. Right? So what I say, I disagree with that. I think regime types matter. Regime types matter. If a small authoritarian state, you will see different kind of foreign policy. If small democratic states, you will see a different kind of foreign policy as well. So in that case, I would challenge the theory that regime types matter a lot in understanding foreign policy of small states. And that particular scholar did not think so. So then I continued that theoretical discussion. So that way we call theoretical puzzle. But anyway, theoretical puzzle, we have three types too. The first one, we call it conceptual omission. Conceptual omission. So conceptual omission is when a body of literature only addresses one type of phenomenon, when theoretically other types of phenomenon could exist. When a body of literature only addresses one type of phenomenon, when theoretically other types of phenomena could also exist. Think about it, in your field, I'm not sure whether you have theories, because in my field we have a lot of kind of theories. Right? We have realism, we have liberalism, we have constructivism, we have feminism, we have the English school, we have Marxism. My goodness, we have what else? Many other theories too. One phenomenon, you can use one theory to explain, but in fact, there are other better theoretical explanations, let's say from constructivism, from liberalism, explaining that particular phenomena as well. So that's what we call conceptual omission. Number two, theoretical convergence. One body of literature is used to weigh in on another unrelated body of literature. Again, I will use my own example. I'm doing IR. In fact, if you read theories from psychology, from sociology, from anthropology, sometimes you can have better explanations by those theories. In fact, I find theories from sociology are quite fascinating in terms of explaining the relationship between Cambodia and China. It's quite interesting, right? If that is the case, right, you use another kind of literature, which is not from your field, to explain the situation in your field. That way we call theoretical convergence. It happens in some cases, but not quite common, but you can try. For example, in history too, right? In history too, you can use ILPD to explain certain historical events years ago too. So that's what we call theoretical convergence. Number 3, square the circle. You pit contradictory theoretical arguments against one another and look to identify an alternative approach to understanding particular phenomena. Again, like I mentioned not long ago, foreign policy of Cambodia, one scholar says it is bandwagoning. Bandwagoning meaning you side one big power, that's called bandwagoning. The other scholar says it's hedging. Hedging means you don't choose sides, you stay in the middle. Right? So we have two kinds of arguments here. So what you want to do is you pitch the argument together, right? You put the argument together, and then that's why we say square the circle. And then you provide your perspective on that. What do you think? You will say it's not hedging, it's not bandwagoning, but what else? Okay. So that way it becomes a theoretical puzzle. I want to work on that, but since my own argument is bandwagoning, I cannot really discredit my own argument. So I don't work on my next project on that. But in case you are interested, you can work on that too. So this is called theoretical puzzle. Any questions on this one before we move on? It's quite rare in Cambodian context. A lot of students do not focus on this. But gentlemen over there did focus on theoretical puzzle. Interesting. But many others do not really focus on this. But I encourage everyone to focus on the theoretical puzzle than the empirical puzzle because the argument will last longer. Theoretical arguments last longer. Empirical arguments will die quite soon. Any clarification, question? All right, all good. So the last one we call, that's easy to understand, empirical puzzle. It's easy to understand. For example, you read papers and then you think that you disagree with the methodology. Then you have the same question, for example, you have the same research question, and you think that their methodology is weak, their methodology is not strong enough. And then you say, okay, I would use my own methodology to answer that question. For example, the paper would use the existing papers use qualitative research by only relying on secondary sources like media reports, so on. But it did not rely on primary sources, meaning the authors did not talk to government officials, policymakers, so on and so forth. And you think that, okay, I wanted to have data by conducting interviews with policymakers, with government officials, and I want to run the regression, which is quantitative method, or typically you want to use mixed method. If that is the case, you can do it. Because you will say my methodology offer a better answer to that question. And if you read the reports by international institutions most of the time, what they disagree most of the time is methodology. If you talk to Ministry of Economy and Finance, people there would disagree with the World Bank's report regarding economic growth in Cambodia. They would say, why do you say 6%? We would say 7% based on our own methodology, right? Based on your methodology, you say 6%. based on my methodology, it says 7%. Right, so different kinds of methodology. So in that case, if you're interested, yeah, you can revise your, you can use your own methodology to answer the same question that the previous author have answered. In that case, you can actually do too. So let me conclude this part. Puzzles are important, and we have 3 types of puzzle. What are the 3 types of puzzle? We check. What are the 3 types of puzzle? The first one, empirical puzzle. Second, theoretical puzzle. Third, how many kinds of empirical puzzle? 3 types. Oh, wonderful. How many kinds of theoretical puzzle? How many kinds of methodological puzzle? Thank you. Now we'll spend like 5 minutes. I did send the paper to Pulu, and Pulu told me that he has already disseminated to all of you. So please open that file. We call ironclad friend, explaining Cambodia's bargaining policy toward China. Please kindly open that file. And what you need to do is you read pages 444 to 447. 444 to 447. Please, only 3 pages. Please spend 5 minutes reading it. Just the introduction part of it. Please, 5 minutes. The question online, we are doing it now. Please open the file. Punlu has already disseminated to the participants. The title of that file is an ironclad friend explaining Cambodia's bargaining policy towards China. The online participant, please open that file and read pages 444 until 447. Please do. 5 minutes, please. One or 2 volunteers to reflect on it a bit. Typically, the purpose of the exercise is to get you to further understand what an introduction looks like and a bit of the substance or contents in that introduction. Can we have 1 or 2 people to reflect on it? What do you think? And can we have 1 or 2? And what? Yes. Lời chặt tay cho về tích tới mình nét ba mươi $. Yes.
I will be here. Again, the question I believe was, what is our impression, our thoughts about reading this and what the content of the introduction literature review is. I would say that I've read about this information in the past, but not recently. So a lot of what I'm reading is consistent with or reminds me I've read this before, meaning that I think this has been comprehensive. There are multiple different views, approaches taken from multiple different articles and journals and different representation for different years. So I think that Dr. Poe is showing the chronology, the history in a structured way to help us to understand what the different situation was, the different positions, some support for that position, and then moving forward. So I think it would certainly need to be reread by me and take some notes to understand it.
but I believe that the structure is good and it's clear to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, providing what has been written in the literature. And as you read that, then you gain knowledge, you gain information, and that helps you to say what really is the puzzle, what do I know, and then again, what do I not know, to help you develop what your eventual question or your focus may be for the future.
Wow. Good. You're gonna sleep well tonight. That was my first journal article, and it went through really painful process and several rounds of revisions. It took me more than a year just to get it published.
Right, so how many revisions did you need to do, peer review? They read it, they said, change it, you sent it back, they read it, changed it, sent it back.
Yes.
So was it 3, 4, 2 times?
Since I
Okay.
the first one, there were two kinds of comment. One reviewer said it was good, the other said nonsense. And the editor was kind enough to give me another chance of revision, and then we found a place and we did that. I sent it back, and the editor was happy, and then we get it published. But it was around a year, more than a year, so the process was quite painful for me. I was young at the time. I'm old now, big face, so I'm okay. But at the time, it was like heartbroken to read the comments. But thanks a lot for that. Now, I was told we will have a short break. I think we can have a break now. 15 minutes break. So let's come back at 3:35. Yeah, so let's come back at 3:35. Thanks a lot, everyone. Enjoy your snacks. It embrace China. What is China? That's the question. So what can be your framework? What can be your framework to answer that question? For example, if you use realism, it would be something like this. Cambodia impresses China because it wants to balance its relationship with Vietnam. This is based on realism. Based on realism. So then it becomes a guide in your study. So you use realism to guide your study. If you use liberalism, for example, you would say Cambodia impresses China because of economic gain. Economic gains in forms such as trade, investment, and foreign aid. This is based on liberalism. So now it becomes your framework. It provides a theoretical lens or conceptual framework through which researchers can view, interpret, and analyze the research question. We'll skip this one. I like to go straight to this because to get you read and understand from the reading is more important than the abstract concept. So I will give you about 5 minutes or so. What you're going to do is to read the theoretical section, which is literature review. In the same paper you read a moment ago, explaining Cambodia's bandwagoning policy toward China. So please spend 5 minutes reading the literature review theoretical section of that paper. Then we will try to reflect on it together. So please do 5 minutes. While you are reading, try to think about theories or concepts in that section. What are the theories and what are concepts? So I think more than 5 minutes already. I can have 1 or 2 people to share your reflection. What do you think about it? What are the theories and concepts in that? Anyone? Tina? Yes, please, love for gentlemen. Tina.
report on this. On the first part, you seem to define or conceptualize hedging and then provide a empirical view by giving an example on Malaysia's and Vietnam hedging, such as economic pragmatism and limited band bargaining. And then you proceed to discuss on to define band bargaining. Of course, you provide two different types of concepts, which are pure and limited, pure band bargaining and limited band bargaining. And then you pointed out the limitation on hedging in describing the situation that you discussed. And in that, I noticed you also pointed out another concept which is called dominance denial, which I think I haven't read all yet, but potentially relevant to the next part of the literature review. That's all from me.
Thank you. As this hold my phone a bit, and what are the concepts that are used in that?
The concept in there, of course, hedging. You point out hedging that is used by two.
But did I agree with?
Oh, no, you did not agree. You actually pointed out the limitation of hedging, and then you define conceptualize band bargaining by discuss two concepts within the concept of band bargaining, which are pure band bargaining and limited band bargaining.
Yeah, and what are the reasons state band bargaining with a bigger power?
Sorry?
What are the reasons states band bargaining with another bigger power?
Band bargaining and
the reasons behind band bargaining for what?
Economic.
So what the end of the section you see?
one is the economic pragmatism.
Okay, one is economic pragmatism.
Military.
Second,
Military.
second, yes.
Military. Power.
What else? Military what? There are four reasons why states band bargain. One, of course, it's more about economic incentives, economic benefits. Second, can you find it? Not yet, but I want to put. Everybody, please clap for Sophia. Everyone find it. Number one, of course, in the economic benefits of economic capitalism. Second, why states can bargain with a bigger power. Second, come on. Yes. Security, yes. Security meaning military support from bigger power, yes. Number three. Sorry. It's political legitimacy, yes. That's number three. Number four. The effectiveness of regional organization like ASEAN. That's number four. So four reasons why state band bargain with a bigger power. Band bargain means you side with a bigger power. So those four reasons are what we call a framework. Again, those four reasons are what we call a framework. It's concepts that can guide your study. So that's what we call framework. On that, let's pause a minute in case you have any questions regarding framework. The online participants, do you have any questions?
Can you tell me what is the difference between I have a question. What is the difference between framework and literature review?
Okay, thank you.
I cannot.
Thank you. It's quite confusing, but literature review in Cambodian context means you review the existing theories that can be used to answer your research question. It can also mean you read the existing literature. Right? You read the existing literature. That way, we also call literature review. Literature review in this case, it means you try to read the existing concepts or existing theories that can be used to guide your research. So some people say theoretical framework, some people would say literature review. In that case, it's all the same. In that case, it's all the same. Some people say theoretical framework, conceptual framework. Some people will say literature review. In my case, I didn't use it. My co-author actually used that literature review. I wrote framework, but we changed it to literature review. But technically, it's the same. It is the same. Then do we take question from?
Yes, there was one question.
So we take from this one. Can we say the research puzzle developing through the process of engaging with literatures, and then we determine puzzles, and we then develop it into main research questions? Correct. It sounds to me that research puzzle is about progress, and we prioritize which puzzle are we dealing first. Yes, research questions may change along the research until it ends, but research puzzle is what we need to determine earlier. So we decide what puzzle to tackle. Yes, correct. Thank you. Why the introduction has no citations? We do have citations in introduction, right? We do need to have citation in introduction. I'm not sure whether my paper we have citations in introduction, but some people have, some people don't. It's just different ways of doing things. Some people will write general things in introduction without citation. That should be fine for some, and for others it's not fine. But it depends on the styles, because there are British, there are Chinese, there are American styles of writing, so it depends. But most of the time, if I'm not mistaken, the American standard do not usually have any citations in introduction. It's mostly like a summary of everything. So they put it all together in introduction. So it depends. But the British, the Australian way, you need to have a citation. So it depends on where you are coming from. Next. Is it permissible to employ multiple theoretical frameworks, realism, liberalism within the literature review? That's a very good question. We call it eclecticism. Eclecticism means you integrate 2 or 3, 4 theories together, and then you try to find a common ground, meaning what is a strength from realism, what is a strength from liberalism, from constructivism, so that you merge it, and then it can become your unified framework. That way we call eclecticism. That way we call it eclecticism. I'm using eclecticism in my current project as well. So it means you take strengths of each theory and you combine it together, and it becomes your unified framework. But you have to make sure it's unified. Next. Reason which is okay. Framework, a text or diagram. Framework can be both. Some people prefer a text, some people prefer a diagram. It depends on your field of research. People from quantitative tend to have graphics when it comes to framework. Me, sometimes I do graphics, sometimes I don't do graphics, so it depends. It depends. But I would suggest graphics or diagrams. Richard, how many research question ideas suitable for specific research? I would take advice from Mark. Mark said 1 research question. I wholeheartedly agree. So 1 research question for 1 research project. Don't do 2 or 3. This is the experience I've seen. A lot of students have like 10 research questions or 5. Yeah, remember it. If you have 5 research questions, meaning you have 5 research projects, right? 1 is perfect. My PhD thesis, only 1. It's gone excellent. So 1 is recommended. Just only 1.
There's an overall research question and also sub-research question to also ask.
It's debatable. In Cambodian context, I've seen a lot of people doing sub-research questions. Me personally, based on my personal experience, I don't encourage people to have sub-research questions. It would distract you from the main research question. Just focus on the main research questions and forget the rest. For example, you want to understand why, focus on why.
reason number 1, reason number 2, reason number 3, reason number 4. It's all done. If you have sub-research questions, it will distract you. And then you will say, okay, what do I want to focus on? What is my main research question? Hey, this is so interesting. I want to focus on this. This is so interesting. I want to focus on this. And then the experience I have with supervising students, including PhD students, they focus a lot. Then the results are not unified. And then the result will speak out 2 different questions. And then when you put all of it together, it's pretty much like theater. And then what is the one thing that you try to do? We don't do. So I'm maybe biased in that sense, but my personal experience, I would not encourage students to have sub-research questions.
Right, so there's an inverse relationship to quantity and quality. I would always go for quality. If you try to have more questions, quantity, your quality goes down. So I would go for 1 quantity, 1 question with extremely high, comprehensive, impactful quality of study.
Yeah, that's a perfect advice. 100% agree. Just one, you have quality, high quality. Maybe you don't really know whether it's quality or not. Because at the end of the day, we would ask, what is your contribution, right? And we would start the question. We don't really know if you have a lot of questions. So please focus on one.
Those who have understood, I think we can skip the question for now.
Now we can skip the question for now. So let's move on. Thanks a lot for keeping me on track. Now you have, by now, you have research puzzle, research question, and you have a framework. Next, you need to work on your methodology, methods and methodology. This is not challenging. I'm sure many of you have been taking classes on research methods and methodology. But now let's talk a bit about it. Most people get confused between methods and methodology. Is it the same or is it different? It's different, right? Now let's talk about methods first. Okay. You have a story. So these are research methods. So in research methods, you have only 3 types. You have quantitative, you have qualitative, and you have mixed methods. That's it. Only 3, right? Quant, mixed. Only 3. Do we have 4? I don't think so. We only have 3. Either you want to focus on qual, or mixed method. And under each particular design, we call research design, you have, for example, under quant, you have experimental design, so on and so forth. Under qual, you have a lot of designs too. Under mixed method, you have a lot too. We don't have time to talk about it, so please do research into it. But this is what we call research method. So you have to decide. You have to decide which one you want to focus. You want to focus on qual, mixed, and if you focus on, let's say, you focus on quant, what type of quant you focus on? Experimental designs, non-experimental design, or what? So let's be clear on that. Then the methodology. The methodology is all about 2 things. Methodology is all about 2 things. One is data collection. Second, data analysis. Only 2. Maybe 3 or more, but in my opinion, I think there's only 2. Data collection and data analysis. And for data collection, I'm familiar with qualitative, so I don't really know about quant. Nothing about quant that I know, but qual, quite sure. So for qualitative data collection tools, you can focus on interview, focus groups, observations, survey questionnaires, ethnography, document analysis. So it's kind of a lot of tools available for you to collect data, right? To collect data. For a qualitative data analysis, you can focus on thematic analysis, content analysis, discourse analysis, reality theory, narrative analysis, so on and so forth. So you have to decide the tools and you have to decide qualitative data analysis. So this briefly about research methods and research methodology. So again, the research method, you have to decide, right, qual, quant, or mixed. And under each particular one, which one would you choose? Then for data collection tools and data analysis methods, you have to decide to which one. For me, I do most of the time interviews. I talk to a lot of people. I do most of the time interviews. Now I do interviews too. And most of the time I focus on content analysis with my data analysis technique. So these are important for you too. Now you have methodologies section in your paper. The next step is you need to write the results, or in other words, we call it findings and discussion section. You need to write the results. And the question for you to think about, how do you write the findings? How do you write the results in your research paper? Now let's talk about it. Now, writing a findings and discussion section. First of all, you need to present data clearly. I will talk about present data clearly in a moment, but first of all, you need to present data clearly. But the question, how do you present data clearly? And we'll talk about that question in a minute. But first of all, you need to present your data clearly. Second, it's important that you are objective. You are objective. This is quite serious if you do political science like me. It's quite serious because I have a lot of friends who are not objective enough. Let's say they are doing democracy, authoritarianism, so on and so forth, and they are biased toward a particular political ideology, which is democracy. So when they write something about Cambodia, it's always bad, right? It's always bad. Things about Cambodia is bad. Things about Cambodia is bad. Cambodia now, we have a new prime minister. People always say this is a political dynasty. A political dynasty, that's bad, right? So that's not objective at all. You need to talk to a lot of people. You need to talk to scholars like me. What do I think about it, right? But most of the time, scholars that I know would point out to me and say, you are biased, you are in Cambodia. Definitely you support your government. If you read my work, right, you read my work well enough, and you listen to me speaking enough, then you would know that I'm not pro-government. I'm not anti-government. I follow the data. I follow the data. I follow the evidence. So a lot of people are not objective in that sense. But your job, you have to be objective, meaning you have to make your discussion, your findings, your conclusion based on the evidence. Right? Based on the evidence. You cannot make it up. It has to be objective in that way. And you need to use quotes and examples as well. When you read the papers, you will see that I have some quotes and examples as well. So these are some of the techniques for you to write findings and discussion section. Next, you need to interpret results. This is so challenging, right? This is so challenging because most of the time, a lot of people do not really know how to interpret the findings. How to interpret the finding, you need to answer one question. What does it mean? What does it mean? Right? What does it mean? Now, I give you one example. China has funded a lot of infrastructure projects in Cambodia, billions of dollars. You find it out. You have data to say that you showed the examples proof. You find it out. That's your finding, right? That's your finding. China has funded massive infrastructure projects in Cambodia. That's your finding. One of the most difficult, challenging job is to interpret it. What does it mean? Now, what does it mean? That's the most difficult. One of the most difficult jobs as a scholar, to interpret what does it actually mean. Right? For example, now CPA has been organizing workshops like this, right? You know it. But the question, what does it mean? It's difficult. You have to attach meaning to it. And then the question is, how do you attach meaning to the finding? How do you attach meaning to the finding? short answer to that is you need to attach meaning to finding based on your framework, because you have framework based on your framework. The frameworks that we talked about in my paper, let's say China has funded infrastructure projects in Cambodia. What it means is that it would enhance the popularity of the government, right? I say that because it's part of the framework. It means like that. So you have to interpret the results that way, right? You have to attach the meanings to the finding. And with that, you need to be able to address these questions too. What is your question from the beginning? Now you have the findings. How do your findings answer your research question? Sometimes it answers your question, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to be very careful with that too. And then you need to discuss a bit of implications as well. Implication meaning what are the consequences of that, right? What are the consequences of that? So these are some tips for you to write findings and discussion section. Present your data clearly, be objective, use quotes and examples, interpret results, address research questions and implications. Now, a bit of bonus, how to present your data. There are many ways you can present your data. Let me go quickly. You can present your data. For example, you can use word tables, lists. You can use graphics, and you can use pictures too. So these are ways that you can present your data. For example, tables and lists, it can look like this. This is from the textbook. For example, the scholar focus on variation among household types in the United States, and then they have 4 household types. Let's say traditional, forced participation, partnership, female-led, immigration patterns, so on and so forth, relationship to labor market, arrangement for childcare. So this is what we call tables and lists. So when you present your data, this is one way you can do it. You can organize it like that. That's one way. Or the other way you can do graphics and drawings like that. For example, when it comes to trade and investment, it's important you do graphics and drawings like this one. For example, this one, Cambodia imports from China. You see what did we import from China, blah, 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 and how much is it, and then it has numbers, so forth. So these graphics are useful when you present your data. Some people do maps like that. It's really interesting. For example, the maps is about protected areas and economic land concession. The red is economic land concession. The green is protected area, and two greens, I don't know. So you can actually do that too. If you take a look at economic land concession, you will see that's kind of massive. And you take a look at this, you will not have question why Cambodia cancels or withdraws from the CSEAS project. Question will be answered. You take a look at this graphic. Economic land concessions here. What province is it? Here is our border with Vietnam. Okay, so it's quite rational for the Cambodian government to withdraw from CSEAS project. You take a look at this month. So this is a very good way to present your data too. You can do maps like that too. I do international relations. A map like this is very useful. This is the South China Sea. Conflicts that are happening, the 9-line, 10-line claims of China in there. So it's important we present this map when we do research on the South China Sea. Like it's too, you focus on hydropower dams on the Mekong River. This is very important too. You see dams. China have been building dams, a lot of dams on the upstream, and down below you see Laos has a lot of hydropower dams. Thailand, a few, Cambodia, a few, Vietnam, almost none. They have a few too, but it's not in the map. So you take a look at it, it's kind of interesting, right? The Mekong River. I've seen a lot of hydropower dams. So it's good to have this kind of map to show to what you are presenting your data. Okay, now we'll give you about 5 minutes. Please read pages from 450 to 457 of the same paper. Please, 5 minutes. It's about findings and discussion section. So findings and discussion section. The online participant, please read page 450 to 457. That section, let me say a bit in Khmer. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, good. That's how my friends. ហ្នឹងគេហៅ finding section អញ្ចឹងនៅពេលដែលបងប្អូនមានresearch puzzle ពីលើមកវាមាន introduction អញ្ចឹងណាបន្ទាប់មកបងប្អូនមានអីមាន framework ហើយនៅក្នុងនេះវាមាន methodology ពីដែរតមកទៀតបងប្អូនត្រូវ report finding ណា report finding នៅពេលដែលបងប្អូន report finding ហ្នឹងបងប្អូនត្រូវតែ report នៅក្នុងរូបភាពជា framework ពីព្រោះឥឡូវ framework របស់យើងគឺមានប្រហែល framework របស់យើង cover នៅលើ 4 ចំណុចទៅនេះអញ្ចឹងចំណុចនីមួយៗហ្នឹងយើងយកមកហើយយើងយកអា finding ហ្នឹងទៅនៅក្រោមចំណុចមួយឧបមាថា economic rewards ហ្នឹងវាមាននៃគេខ្លះតាក់ទងនឹង trade តាក់ទង investment តាក់ទងនឹង infrastructure ផ្សេងៗយើងដាក់វាចូលនៅក្នុង economic rewards security support យើងដាក់នៅក្នុង security support អញ្ចឹងអា finding របស់យើងត្រូវដាក់បែបហ្នឹងបើថាបើ framework យើងនិយាយខាងនេះយើងត្រូវដាក់ finding របស់យើងនៅក្រៅ framework មួយទៅនេះហ្នឹងភាសាបច្ចេកទេសគេហៅថា operationalization ទៅនេះភាសាបច្ចេកទេសហៅ operationalization and it is very difficult. I've seen a lot of students writing their thesis. They do not really do that, right? They have frameworks separately and then they have findings and findings do not correspond to the framework. But in this particular case, it's important when you write a finding section that has to respond, that has to correspond to the framework, right? If the framework says economic rewards, it has to be economic rewards in the finding section. You cannot say any other things. Let's say culture. Do I have anything about culture? No. So then I don't write anything about culture in that because the framework doesn't say anything about culture. So again, to conclude that part, the findings you have to write it to correspond with the framework section. Now I want to pause a bit in case you have any questions regarding that findings and discussion section. Any questions or clarification? We have a question online. What is phenomenology and how important is it for social science research? I don't have comprehensive answers to that question. My understanding is that phenomenology is a study about phenomenon, and it's really important because everything we do is study phenomenon, and phenomenon, simply put, is an event. That's it. Is an event, and you want to understand an event in detail. So that's why you focus on. Yeah, that's why you do research. Sachin Ali. Okay, Sachin Ali, the team will send you the slides afterward. How about writing the area on limitations study as well as its future trends? Richard, I think you can do that in the conclusion. In the conclusion section, you can actually discuss a bit about limitations and future research. Yes. Okay, motivation behind, yeah, that's correct. That put here and good discussion in final part. Yes, you can integrate findings and discussion in findings and discussion section. Some people subread it Some people would just report findings in a separate finding section and they keep discussion in the conclusion. You can do that, but some people integrate findings and discussion together and they leave conclusion pretty much a summary of everything. So it's two different ways of doing it. Can table also include in quantitative research, not qualitative finding? I'm not sure whether I understand your question correctly. I think any tables, graphics can be included in qualitative research. So that is no limit to that. The more you do that, the better, I think. Yes. Where's the framework here and why that framework? For framework, you need to read the literature review in that paper and why that framework. I discussed that in that framework too. You may refer to that section, literature review. Is there no difference between research question and research problem? Research question, you start with WA question, for example, why, what, where, how. The research question. Research problem, pretty much like a statement trying to say that this is a problem. But it's not a question. The question has to be like why, what, when, or how, right? Okay. Any other things? Do we need to point out each finding to respond to each question in case there is more than one question? Yeah, we discussed earlier. We do not recommend more than one research question. So I cannot answer that because we encourage one research question. Would it be okay to use the previous framework from the previous studies as a model to create a new framework? Yes, the new framework has to be based on the previous framework as well. For example, the previous framework, you would say it has limitations, and you think that the framework that you are developing is a better one, is a sophisticated one, and then yes, it can replace the old framework, even though it answers the same question, but your framework offers a better lens of looking at that question. Yes. What is the difference between implication, suggestion, recommendation, and research? Implications, something that happened because of the event. Something that happened because of the event that we call implication. Suggestion, something you suggest. Right? You suggest to, in my case, you suggest to the Chinese government or you suggest to the Cambodian government to do certain things. Recommendation and suggestion are pretty much the same, even though the word recommendation is a bit stronger. Suggestion is a bit softer. What is the difference between theoretical framework and conceptual framework? It would be kind of chummy to talk about the difference between the two, so that's why we do not talk about it. In short, theoretical framework, pretty much you look at grand theories. In my case, realism, liberalism, all of the things are theoretical framework. Conceptual framework, in my case, it would look into smallest concepts. For example, the balance of power is a concept, as some people say is a theory. It's debatable, but I would say it's a concept. So you would look at that small concept. So when you use that in your study, it becomes theoretical framework. Conceptual framework. I did your interest, clear easy structure, most of findings seem to take from reports or say what's your advice and why and what level and at what level you decide to use quotes from it. Quotes from the reviews are useful because readers want to understand what the interviewees really actually say about it. They feel personal to it. So include some, yeah, not all of it, but include some. You cannot include all of it because of the space limit. Include some, and not too long. 4 or 5 sentences should be fine. What is the significance of research implication rationale for the study? You do that in the introduction, maybe the significance of your research. when you found the research puzzle, within the research puzzle, embedded it within the research puzzle, it's actually significant already. According to literature review, how to write a theory and what and conceptual framework together. I think it's quite confusing for a lot of people, so that's why I would not try to differentiate between theoretical or conceptual framework. What I would like to encourage everyone is to focus on framework in general. That way it's easy for you. You try to understand theoretical framework, conceptual framework. At the end of the day, it doesn't help you with research. Just focus on framework. As long as it is a framework, you don't need to care whether it's theoretical, conceptual, you don't have to care. As long as it is a framework, it can help guide your study and pretty much done the job.
One comment is, I think these questions are extremely important, and I think when someone is learning to first do research, you want to make sure that you're checking off the boxes, you're following the correct protocol, this framework, that framework, this theory, that theory. I think it's important that you focus not necessarily on you have to have a framework, you have to have structure, you have to approach this in a deliberate step-by-step manner. I would suggest, though, that people will be more lenient. They will be focusing more on the content of what you're saying, the importance of what you're saying, and they will overlook perhaps, this may a little bit be displaced, or this might not be in the best place, etc. So I would suggest that it's difficult to do. Don't let the process get in your way. Have some idea, but the more important point again is your content. The contribution is more important than I have the exact structure down for the paper. Would you agree?
Sure. Thank you. I would definitely agree with that. Be flexible. As I said, the structure of the report is just general guideline, but it can be flexible as you see fit. Right? Wonderful. Any other question before we proceed? Yes.
Does in the finding part, it is different from the discussion part?
It depends. As I said before, some people just say findings and they discuss findings in the finding section, and some people say write findings and discussion. So it depends. Right? It depends. In my paper, I do not write anything like findings and discussion section. So yeah, it depends. But as long as you see that you understand that okay, this is findings and discussion section, it's all done. It's all good to go. And some people, for example, some people may discuss findings straight away. Some people may leave the discussion section in the conclusion. So it depends. So that's why you see some papers, they have long conclusion sections, and in some cases you will see shorter conclusion sections. So it depends, right? And then based on fields that you are able to. In my field, we like to discuss findings immediately straight away, one by one. And we keep the conclusion section sort of like, so it depends. When others, they have long, a few pages conclusion sections because they have discussion in the conclusion. And so it depends. Yes?
The short question is, I think I assume it as a yes, like the framework does affect how our finding and thinking about all research, right?
Yes.
Like our approach to a different framework.
Yes.
So like if our research question and puzzle set the intent to the topic, we actually have as a researcher, like our own concept, we actually have some bias on the finding. So do you have any example like the framework that is well integrated with with the finding, that based on purely on find like integrating, like it's well integrated.
I think it has to be that way. You have to make sure that the findings, as I said before, the findings have to correspond, right? Correspond to the framework. If it doesn't, then you're not doing a good job in that. You have to make sure the findings correspond to the framework, right? And you also mentioned about the limitation. What if some of the findings do not correspond to the framework? You can acknowledge the limitation of your study. You say, okay, my study only focuses on this particular area. We do not focus on other area, and those areas can be further explored by other scholars as well. You can actually acknowledge the limitation. You can do that in the conclusion.
Another one, like what is like the finding? It's not like correspond to the framework, and then
I know, I get the point. And in some cases, yes, I've heard about it. In some cases, yes, there are two kinds of people when they found out that the findings do not correspond to the framework. There are two types of people. One kind of person is to restructure the whole framework to fit with the finding. That's one person. The other person I never seen, I heard, is to acknowledge that my framework is wrong. And it concludes the research. I have never seen it, but I heard people told me there were a few people who actually did that, but I haven't seen it those people myself, but I heard the story. In my case, I restructured the whole framework.
I think so. Is like we come to the finding, the conclusion that we admit that our framework is not on that. Then on, we do the same research paper, but we don't go in a framework. We use our citation from our
Yeah.
That's
You can build on.
do that.
Yeah, I do that. You build on it. Like you build on your existing research, so that's a very good way to do it. A lot of scholars do that. They build on their existing research. For example, I look at Buddhist perspective, and my letter paper, I looked at the Chinese perspective. So it's kind of you build on your existing research as you go, and you cite the same. Just cite your work so much time. That's why you see Sydney scholars, they have their own citations a lot in their paper. I think we don't have time. It's almost 5. I have a few points more to cover. Now, writing a conclusion, it's kind of straightforward and very simple, but thanks a lot for the comments and question earlier. For writing the conclusion, he just suggested structure. You can take a look. You can, for example, restate the purpose and summarize key findings when you begin your conclusion section. And as we talked about, you can acknowledge the limitations of your study in there, meaning this is you focus on, and there are other areas that you do not focus on. You can acknowledge the limitations of your study, and then you can conclude with a strong closing statement, a strong closing statement. So you can end with a thought-provoking statement or a call to action that reinforces the importance of your research. So you can actually do that. A lot of papers that have thousands of citations, usually they have strong closing statement. For example, in my field of research, scholars will say, China is a threat. China is a threat to the US national security. They conclude that. It's a very strong statement, right? And some people do that. So that's why they have a lot of citations because of that. So that's very strong closing statement. We don't have time to read it, but I encourage everyone to read it too. Now, 2 more small points I want to cover is number 1. Sorry. Choosing a journal. Now, let's suppose that you have a journal already. You have a paper that is ready to be submitted to a journal. You want to publish it. how do you choose a journal? So that's why I have it here. Choose and not be chosen. So that's okay. Because I feel like in Cambodia, people would just ask me, how do I choose a journal? I think next step should be, how does a journal choose you? Because not pretty much like you choose a journal. You choose it first and then you have to be chosen. Like me, I'm reviewing papers, right? Scholars submit their papers to that journal asks me to review that article, so I have to choose that paper. Yeah, you have to choose that paper, the editor has to choose that paper too. So first you choose the journals, of course, and then later on you have to be chosen. Now, some tips for you when you want to choose a journal. One, you need to look at scope and focus. For example, me, I focus on IR. So I will take a look at a list of journals that focus on international relations. In my field, is like 200-300 journals, and it has ranking too. It has number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. In Australian context, we have A stars, A, B, and C. I have 1A, 1B, 2C or something. I don't have A stars. It's hard to get A stars. So you can look at scope and focus. For example, history, you have journals that focus on history too. So you need to understand scope and focus of a journal. Next, you need to look at reputation and impact factor. And this is so important. I discussed a bit with my colleagues before. In Cambodia, we don't really care so much about reputation and impact factor. But again, if you want to be a world-class international scholar, travel the world speaking on your topic, you have to publish at international, reputable, high impact factor journal. Definitely you have to. If not, then nobody will know you, and then they will think that your work is not credible enough. Then you are not considered as an international renowned scholar, right? So consider that reputation and impact factor. Publication frequency and timeline, you have to look at that too, because some journals publish once a year, whether you want to do that once a year, and some journals publish like 3 or 4 times a year. You may want to do that 3 or 4 times a year. So please consider frequency and timeline too. A peer review process is important. If you send to a very good journal, they have very rigorous peer review process. You get a lot of comments from it. You can learn along the way too. So think about that. Low quality journals, they don't have rigorous peer review process. Ethical standards. This is very important. Ethical standards, because I can tell you right now what we have around the world, particularly in Asia, and particularly, my apologies to India, particularly India, they have what we call predatory journals. Predatory journals. It's a journal, but it's predatory. What do we mean by that? You have to pay a lot, like a few $100, $500. In other cases, I got email saying that $1,000. Remember, you do not need to pay. You do not need to pay. In rare cases, it pays, but I will not encourage you to pay for your publication. You don't have to pay because it's your contribution, so you don't have to pay to get your work published. If it pays, chances are it's low quality journal, and chances are it's what we call predatory journals. And it has no peer review process. You send it to them, they provide comments, and they say, congratulations, your paper has been accepted, we will publish it. And then you have your publication, right? Wow, I'm so proud. My publication based in Europe, based in, let's say, the US or in the UK. Yeah, I'm a scholar now, but no, that's predatory journal. Watch out, and watch out with predatory journal. It's a lot. It's a lot. Now, lastly, you need to, when you submit your paper, there are 4, I think 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 decisions from a journal. When you send your paper to a journal, 4 decisions. If your paper is really, really well written, it will be accepted without revision. But that's super rare. That's super rare. That in my experience, I haven't seen one. It happens, but it's extremely rare, accepted without revision. In other cases, which is also rare, accepted with minor revision. Most of the time, it is revised and resubmit, and quite common rejected. Most of the time, you send to it with that rejection, and it's kind of hard to. So let's say your paper is revised and resubmit, right? Your paper is revised and resubmit. And how to address reviewers' feedback. How to address reviewers' feedback. Before I talk about it, I'd like you to open a Word document. As I sent to you, a Word document. The title of that Word document is Journal of Contemporary Asia. The title of that Word document is Journal of Contemporary Asia. I want you to take a look at that a bit. It is a comments I got from Journal of Contemporary Asia. And you can take a look quickly and see how painful I am. It's like 18, 17, 18 pages of comments. And my paper is like 30 pages and comments like half of that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, you can take a look quickly and we'll get back to this one. Okay, I think we don't have time. Everybody is in the rush to get home now. So let's move on. 5 minutes more if you can stay. So let's say you have comments from reviewers. It is revised and resubmit, meaning you can revise it and then you can resubmit it. You can resubmit your paper. In that case, what should you do? A couple of suggestions for you. Number one, you need to read feedback carefully, meaning you have to read line by line. And you have to read line by line in order to understand what is it about. In my first experience, I did terribly reading it. It got rejected when I resubmitted it. So that's my mistake. Later on, I realized that, okay, I have to read line by line to really understand what each line, each sentence means. So read carefully, line by line. And then you need to organize comments, right? Organize comments. Comments are about research question, research puzzle, or comments are about methodology, or about pedagogical framework, or about details, or about what. So you can organize those comments based on themes as well. And then you can prepare a response document. A response document, something like this. Dear editor, here are the responses that we have, or the changes that we have with regards to the comments. So one, we address this point. Second, we address that point, so on and so forth. So that way we call a response document. It's like 2 to 3 pages as well when it comes to response document. And you have to respond to each comment. You cannot ignore comments. You have to respond to each comment. If you agree with the comment, you address it. If you do not agree with the comment, you have to say why you disagree with the comment politely. You can say, with respect, we believe that this comment is not aligned with our own. Then we respectfully choose not to address it in our own revision, right? So please respond to each comment, whether you agree or you disagree. And when you do so, be professional and be cautious, because some scholars are arrogant, right? They bluntly say, "Oh, I disagree with this one. Why? It doesn't really make sense to me." That's arrogant. If you do that, the editor will feed to you, and then they will reject your paper. And you cannot simply say that unless you are, in my field, you are John Lee-Scheimer or John Eigenberry or Amita Jan, where I met last week. Only you are public guys, maybe you can be a bit of arrogant. But in your level and my level, definitely no. You have to be very polite and very professional when you reply. In my own case, I have to say something like this. I have to say something like, dear editor, my name is doing a PhD at this university. I still lack of experience in publication. Need your advice on this. This is what we have. Please kindly advise if anything I can do further. I'm learning. You have to be something like that, right? To be humble. Otherwise, your purpose will be rejected. Of course, you need to revise your manuscript. You need to summarize major revisions in there too. And of course, you have to submit your response. You have to submit your response. One, you submit your revised paper. Second, you submit your response document to two separate documents. This is some the tips for you when you address reviewers' feedback. Any question before we move on? Yes.
Question regarding about the response to the feedback. As your show journal comment over there is something that they write in the word. So we responded in that word and attach back to that, or it will be an email or something that can respond.
Thank you. What I did in the past was to structure those comments and then respond to each particular line. For example, some comments are written in a very long paragraph, and I break down paragraphs into small segments, right? Small segments. Then I respond to small segments. Sometimes it can be one sentence, sometimes it can be two sentences, and then I respond to each particular sentence that I wrote down. And then you attach it as a separate document together with your actual revised and then you send it to the editor. But they will have a platform for you to send either by email or by their own platform that they will tell you what to do.
Share that. Sorry, would you share that also?
They will tell you what you mean it was my own broken laptop.
Another question regarding about the payment that you mentioned about the predatory journal. Because I heard some is open for public access, also some that is pay for access. Yeah. So the published the journal writer should pay or they will not pay. It based on the journal. So when you say that it is pay and mostly it will be predatory, so is it affect?
All right. My point is, if you want to publish your paper and you pay, my comment is that you should not do it. But if you want to read papers and you have to pay, it's a different thing. Because some papers you have to pay in order to get access to it. If you don't pay, you don't have access to it. In that case, it's okay. In that case, it's okay. But if you pay to get your paper published, it's a different topic. And in that case, I would not suggest you to pay and publish your work.
What I thought is that when the writer did not pay, it will be the reader that will pay or something like that.
Some journals are generous, like the journal I published with, Journal Coherence Organization Press. They are open access. They're run by non-profit human organization. It's open access. Some other journals you have to pay, and it's a long debate whether knowledge should be free. Scholars like us from developing countries would say knowledge should be free. Scholars from other parts of the world say no, knowledge should be paid for. If you are so curious about getting knowledge in the first place, so that's why university in the US is quite expensive. That's why in UK too. Don't get it to use it on free in Germany in the Nordic. Yes. Any other questions?
Does I have a question. Does the reviewer always write about? I mean, do you agree all the time with the reviewer feedback for your article?
That's a good question. Most of the time, yes.
Anything?
Not everything, but most of the time. 80%, 90%, I agree with the reviewers because they pointed out the blind spots, the things that we overlook. So somewhere in there, we have to address their comments. I think they see something in there, so that's why they pointed it out. So I would agree with them, 18, 70, yeah, 80, 90% most of the time. 10% I don't agree, but most of the time I agree. As I revise it, because the experience is that when I revise it, I send it to another journal, you get good comments because I revise based on the previous comments. So I think you have done good jobs. So we have to one way or the other agree. I agree with the viewers most of it. Any other questions, comments? No. So a question from online now.
You can try to address one or two, or if it is relevant, if it's not, can ask them to email.
Can you recommend a few journals in Cambodia for first-time researchers? Sorry, we're different fields. I'm IO person, so I can only talk about IO. So I think it's fine. 5:10. If you don't have any questions, you have any questions, clarification, you want to reach out to me, welcome. I always want to give aspiring scholars, so you are welcome. Without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, participating in our workshop in the afternoon. Please fill in the survey and the post-training knowledge survey as well. Your comment is very welcome to prepare the next workshop. And the same thing goes to all my participants. Please share a few more minutes with us and start the survey that will be easier. Thank you so much. The workshop is missed. Hope to see you next time. Thank you.